All right. Well, happy Sunday, YouTube. Welcome to yet another live chat. Always looking forward to these. So excited to be here with all of you today. Feel free to ask me anything and everything, anything about singing, anything about speech coaching, anything about speech pathology, whatever you'd like to ask away. Looking forward to your questions. Don, first time. Well, welcome to the group. We'll have some people joining us, some more people joining us later, I'm sure. We have a nice little tight-knit group here that always joins us. Vincent is one of them, always here. Good to see you, Vincent. But glad to have you, Don, for your first time. Rutrow. Sounds a little bit like Scooby-Doo there, which reminds me, you can ask anything about voice impressions. That's also something we do here. Anything singing, anything speech coaching, anything speech pathology, anything voice impressions, basically anything that comes out of here, noises that come out of there, we can talk about. Let's get started with Sally. Let's see. Sing alto, any handy hints on how to find that all-important first note of my alto line when starting a new song? Once I have that first note, the rest mostly seems to fall into place. So a little bit of clarification on this, Sally. When you're saying finding that note, are we talking about pitch? That it's difficult to find the pitch? Or are we talking more about the registration? Which part are we talking about there? It sounds like when you're saying singing in a choir that it might be hard to find your line, to find your notes within it. Yeah, the pitches. Okay. Yeah, well, it's going to come from a few things. One, obviously, the more experience you get, the easier it is to find notes in there. I found for myself that when I just sang by myself, trying to just go sing with other people and find harmonies was really difficult. But a lot of improv work, a lot of just taking some risks and trying to find those pitches was the first helpful step for me. But then I would take it to some exercises, try to do some harmony exercises. Ways you can do that are, if you're just using the keyboard, you can try to get really good at relative pitches, knowing what it sounds like to do a fifth, right? Knowing what it sounds like to do a third. Knowing what those relative pitches are and playing a line on the piano and seeing if you can sing the harmonic line to it. So let's say I know I'm doing, can I know what the fifth would be to that? Right, so challenge yourself, give yourself the intervals you want to do. I'm going to do a fifth, I'm going to do a fourth, I'm going to do a third, whatever it might be, and get really good at being able to do that, not by hearing it, but by telling yourself, okay, what is a fifth? Okay, I found it, right? So that's the first step. Well, actually, the first step was just more experience. The second step was saying, I'm going to practice these intervals without hearing them, just knowing them. Then trying to do that with other people. You could even start by doing that with yourself, meaning record a vocal line and see if you can sing the harmonic line on top of it. Other things that might help, understanding the music theory behind it. Once you know where that alto part usually tends to sit, obviously every song will be a little bit different, but if you can know the general ways that these parts fit together, it really helps to know the theory behind that. Helps to know what key you're singing in, so you know what notes to find. I would also say, helping to know what key it's in and knowing how these parts fit together will help you to know where you need to flip to head voice or where you need to stay in more of a mix or where you need to stay in a chest. I have found that's been a difficult thing, is when you're singing a harmony, you're just focusing so much on the pitch and not about your registration. And a lot of times your registration will dictate how you're going to be able to find that note. You might think it's something more chesty, so you're trying to find this pitch and you're all over the place. But if you know that relatively where this one song is going to sit is going to be more in that head range, for example, it's a lot easier to just assume you're in that section of your voice and jump there. So all of these things, experience, trial and error, doing exercises where you give yourself harmonies and you have to sing them without hearing them first, understanding the music theory understanding where the voice sits, and understanding your registration on which notes you will flip or stay in your chest, etc. That's all going to be helpful for that. But by and large, experience is going to help you. And if possible, one thing that I had the luxury of doing was I sang backup vocals for a singer. He was a solo singer songwriter, and we would just do weddings and things like this, cocktail hours, and I was able to sing harmony. But the joy of that and the blessing of that was I was not front and center, and so I could come in harmonies when I wanted to, back off when I didn't want to. And so unlike a choir where you have a specific line you have to come in for, I had this luxury of, oh, well, let me trial and error. I could even sing away from the mic a little bit and then, oh, I found it, and then come back to the microphone, right? So if you can find a live situation like that where you're doing backup and it doesn't depend on you, the performance doesn't depend on you, that's a really good place to get a feel for this and not feel like if you mess up, it's the biggest deal, right? So something like that, if you can find a live setting like that before you go to the big performance, that would really be great. Even just a simple open mic night where somebody else is really doing the majority of the singing gives you a good opportunity to experiment and to improv a little bit. Yeah, I've found that most of my musical skills have been really cemented once I was in a live setting and I had to do it on the spot. Hope that helps, Sally. Vincent, it's common for people to get dried out throats while they're asleep overnight. Is there research to suggest that this causes significant damage to the cords over time? Great question. As far as the research over whether this will cause significant damage, I can't point to a specific research project that would show that. However, with everything in life, it's not a good idea to damage or tire something out, let it heal, damage it, let it heal, damage it, let it heal. That's not the process we're looking for, with the exception of working out muscles. That's not damaging them, that's just pushing them a little bit. Whereas if we're just drying out the cords, it's not the best thing. So a few things. One, that's not going to happen as much if you're breathing through your nose while sleeping. Some of us have a habit of being open mouth breathing sleepers. If you can avoid that, that would be best. The nose helps to moisturize and humidify the voice a little bit, the breath a little bit, so that's a good idea to try to breathe through the nose. Secondly, if you can get a humidifier in the room, that would be really helpful. Also, remember that a large part of hydration comes from systemic hydration, not just from environmental factors, although it's part of it. So if you can continue to be drinking, that's always a good idea as well. But it's funny, you'd think that we can at least sleep well, right? But a lot of times sleep can affect our voice. We need to make sure that we are breathing through the nose, that the room is humid enough, that if we have allergies, that we are regularly cleaning out the room for dust and things of that nature. If you are prone to acid reflux, making sure that you're not eating about 3 hours before bed, because as you lay down, that reflux comes up and it's not a good situation. So you want to be careful of the way we sleep. It is important. But the most important thing is that we are getting sleep. Anita, hello, happy to see you as well. Belting should be done in a medium volume or the top of one's lungs. When I belt at the top of my lungs, I go hoarse for a few minutes or hours. Why does this happen? Well, I think your second comment answers your first, right? If anything is making you go hoarse for minutes or hours or at all, that's not a good thing. Singing, again, as I was just saying, is not the thing that we want to beat up and let it heal and beat up and let it heal. That is not good for our voice. I am of the opinion, and there's an argument to be made against what I'm about to say, but my opinion is that nothing should be done as loud as you possibly can, and nothing should really be done as quietly as you possibly can. Those extremes, especially as loud as you possibly can, are damaging to the voice. They are damaging to the voice. Why? To answer your question, why does this happen? This is a pretty small area in here, and you're blasting tons of force, tons of air pressure through that small space. The smaller a space is versus the amount of air you're blasting through there, the greater chance that damage will occur, right? If I could think of an analogy here, if you have a fan on in a big room, it won't cause that much damage. But if that same fan is in a really small enclosed space, everything in that space will blow around. Wind that is outside does not damage many things, but if that same force was inside your whole room would get turned upside down, right? So the force that's going on versus the amount of space it has to interact within is going to affect the amount of damage done. So we should never be belting at the top of our lungs. Belting is not about the amount of airflow. It's not. Belting is about, are we bringing that chest voice past where it wants to be? You have a certain note in your range that wants to be your last chest note. This is a spectrum, of course, but generally there's an area where chest wants to stop and it wants to flip into our head or falsetto. Chest voice is just dragging that up. Now, I recognize that's easier to do with more volume, but those are not inextricably linked. Okay, you might need to give a little more volume, but by and large, if you can only get a note via large amounts of volume, that's not the best technique. And as you're seeing, it's going to hurt you. We don't need to be as loud as that. That's what microphones are for. Let's remember that microphones exist. They are meant to amplify the human voice louder than it can naturally go. If you are in an environment where you need to be that loud, you should be using a microphone or not singing or talking at all. Hope that helps. Jan, which are the main muscles that we have to use to reach flageolet? I know about the cricothyroid and the interarytenoids. I've been studying some anatomy. Yes, you have. Are there other main muscles? And you say, I guess it doesn't require a lot of thyroarytenoid activation. Jan, you're spot on. You're spot on here. So for those who don't know, flageolet is this register above your head voice. This all the way up there, right? And you're right. It activates a few things. First, it activates the cricothyroid muscle, or cricothyroid, depending on how you want to say it. Cricothyroid goes from your thyroid cartilage, the shield up front, to your cricoid. This is this ring-like structure. And there's a muscle that goes in between those. And as they come together, the thyroid and cricoid come together. And as that happens, the vocal folds are stretched. Since this is a really high-pitched register, we need to lengthen the cords. That is done by the cricothyroid muscle. The thyroarytenoid muscle, which is our pitch lowering muscle, that's pretty much having no activation whatsoever. Let's also remember that the vocal ligament, that's a body part you didn't mention, is being stretched, but that's happening passively. It's not doing it itself. You asked muscles, not ligaments. The vocal ligament is not actively going, it's being passively pulled by the cricothyroid. Interarytenoids, yes, can be involved for sure. And it's possible, depending on how compressed or tight you get that flageolet, to use a little bit of the thyrovocalis muscle, kind of flexes the cords and brings them together there, but generally not so much, because the thyrovocalis and the thyromuscularis portions of the thyroarytenoid muscle tend to activate more on that lower stuff, but the vocalis, we can get some of that flex and tension there. Other than that, it's very hard to do that without raising your larynx. So some of those laryngeal muscles might be in place. So, but for the most part, no, those shouldn't be engaging, but it's very difficult to do that without raising that a little bit. Although, we've said this a million times before, the larynx is not a pitch changing body part, but it's likely going to raise. So some of those might be there. Other than that, those are the main muscles. You're really spot on there. Yeah, very smart. Good to learn your anatomy, everyone. If you haven't taken any anatomy classes or haven't at least looked up some of the anatomy, you absolutely should. All right. David. Hi, Brennan. Hi, David. I have a bass voice. What's the best way to do impressions of female voices? The same way we all do impressions, all the males do impressions of female voices. You're going to have to flip into that head voice or that falsetto. Just because you are a bass doesn't mean you don't have a head voice or falsetto, right? You absolutely can still flip into a bit of a head voice or falsetto. The tricky thing, and obviously we are all learning how to control all of our anatomy, myself included. The tricky thing about doing some of these female voices is trying to still get some of that compression that is present naturally in a female's voice, a female's lower voice. For us males, it's a higher voice for us, right? So it's trying to not make it sound as falsetto and a little bit more of a head voice. That's the difficulty there, trying to still have some of that connection of the chords there. So yeah, that's how I would do that. Also, trying to keep some of the resonance features intact. You're going to need to do a higher voice, but with a more neutral, lower larynx. And that's a real challenge. But I want to say a quick statement about vocal classification. You mentioned your bass. Vocal classifications are important, but they're not all important. And this might be a Brendan position, but I often find that people cling to their voice classification and as a result hinder themselves from accessing so many other wonderful areas in their voice, right? Vocal classifications are most important if you're singing in a choir. You need to be able to sing in an area that is naturally able to be amplified more than your other areas. And if you're a bass and you can pump that up, you should be singing bass. But in a modern pop and rock context, we have microphones. And so the amount of strength that you can get and volume that you can get in a particular area of your voice is much less important than it is in a choir setting. So just because you're a bass, don't let that hinder you. For years, I said, I'm a baritone. I'm a baritone. I can't do anything above this, right? And now I've really opened myself up to be able to do all these different voices. And for those of you who know, I have a show on YouTube called Voice Breakdown where I do all these impressions. I never would have been able to do half of them had I just kept saying, well, I'm a baritone. I can't do it, right? And so I would just encourage you to be proud of your bassness, but also don't be afraid of trying out these other areas of your voice. Hope that is helpful for you, David and Sally and Anita. I'm glad those were helpful for you. Vincent, are you still considering a singing voice breakdown series? Sure, I'm still considering it. I'm considering anything that is helpful to all of you. To give you all a little inside scoop, I did have a fun idea just the other day. We just filmed the 30-second, I believe, voice breakdown video. It's obviously not released yet, but we just filmed the 30-second just this past week. And I thought to myself, it might be fun to do a video that is a montage of all of these voices. Maybe once I hit voice 50, that seems like a nice solid number. And part of me thought it might be fun to do a song where all 50 of my characters sing together. So at the very least, there will be that. But as for a specific singing voice breakdown video, definitely open to the idea. I just have so many character voices that I want to do first. We are nowhere near done with this series, and so I want to run with what I'm doing for a little bit, but absolutely considering that. And just so all of you know, we really read the comments and we really listen to those comments. And so suggestions like this are definitely considered and listened to. For those of you watching who haven't seen the series, what are you waiting for? As soon as this chat is over, go watch, like, comment, subscribe, check out the voice breakdown series. Jan, do you have some good exercises for interarytenoid activations so I can master the control of this muscle? Yes, I do. I would first start with some sounds instead of singing. Sounds that really get those interarytenoids working. First would be the dog whimper. Has everyone ever heard a dog cry? It wants food or it wants to get out of its cage or something, and you hear that sound. I want you to practice that. Get that sound going, and then be able to slide it. Right? You're going to feel that way in the back. That's that interarytenoid going on. Okay? Other sounds that do that, ape or monkey sounds. Right? All of that will get those sounds going. Some people have said it kind of sounds like a dolphin a little bit too. That sort of sound. So I hear more of the dog whimper and the monkey. So you can try those. Then my favorite is the oon. O-O-N, O-O-N. And if you notice, smallest mouth possible. Don't go, right? And you're going to feel this pull in this direction. Okay? Once you can do that short and sweet, then try to slide it around. Lastly, once you can do that in all sorts of different note configurations, try to then hold that interarytenoid squeezing, that flageolet, and then see if you can open up the resonance without changing that interarytenoid squeeze. Something like right? And it can get pretty loud without even giving much force. I'm not giving a lot of airflow. Related to Anita's question before, you don't need to give tons of airflow. This is small. It sounds loud, but it really isn't a lot at all. Okay? That would be my suggestions for the interarytenoids. Really trying to get that squeezing in the back there. Okay, Anita, how do I extend my range without hurting my vocals beyond a G6? G6, everybody. If you're going up to a G6, so G4, G5, G6. This is some super high stuff. You were able to hit that note comfortably, good. But you're not able to go beyond that note. It's a pretty high note, G6. My suggestion would have been everything that Jan and I were just talking about. Those interarytenoid exercises, those flageolet exercises are going to help you to thin out the chord so you can stretch beyond that, but still have that nice little connection there. So everything I just said for Jan will be really, really helpful for you. And another thing I would do, the way that I started to get up to that area, is my vocal fry slides. I've talked about these in the past, right? So vocal fry gives you that nice little crackle. And I want this to be super light. I don't want, you're not pushing. And then I want you to slowly slide that up. Right? Slide that up and try to get that crackle all along the way, and that'll help you. That's years ago how I first even started accessing all of that high stuff. It'll keep you light, it'll allow you to stretch, but still not let the chords break into just a pure whisper, and it also will enable less of that strain there. In general, with high notes though, if you only focus on the high notes, that's not the answer. Believe it or not, focus on your low notes, focus on your mid notes, improve everything, and that will be able to get up there. You also might want to think a little bit about what's going on in the larynx. A lot of times as you're going higher, we tend to raise the larynx. So if you're really cranking it up, you might need to throw a low larynx exercise or low larynx coordination in here. Sounds like ooh, sounds like oh, purposefully dropping that larynx and trying to drop that a little bit. That'll help you get up there as well. But a G6 is pretty high, so don't feel bad about that at all. Seems like Jan is on the same path here. And Jan says, oh man, those exercises, my family is going to kill me. Yeah. You know, when it comes to practicing, there is a balance that we need to strike between accepting that we are vocalists and people should be on our journey with us and whatever they can deal, as well as let me be as respectful as I can. So if there are times when they're not home, that's definitely when you should practice. And then, of course, speaking to them and saying, I hope you understand my journey here. And hopefully they respect that as well. If you don't know this guy, you should definitely check him out. Yeah, I'm actually not familiar with him. Dimash, I'm not familiar with him. I will check him out on YouTube for sure. Oh, I missed a part by you, Jan. You said, what is the relation of the closed embouchure with the flageolet? Is it something about the pressure on the glottis? Yeah. Physics, just simply put. We've talked a little bit about occluding the vocal tract and how that helps to balance out the pressures on top of the vocal cords, vocal folds. But yeah, there is that reversed megaphone shape, as they call it, helps us to elongate and balance out those pressures acting on the cords, whereas the wide open embouchure kind of does the opposite. That being said, I have seen sometimes people go the other extreme. Sometimes they can get a little bit of a squeeze there too, but I would not recommend starting there. That's often going to put a lot of pressure, a lot of subglottal pressure on the vocal folds, and we don't want that. But yeah, long story short, megaphone shapes is what's going on here. Ah versus ooh will help to elongate and balance out the vocal cord pressures. David says, you can only get to C5 in falsetto. Cool. And you're hoping that Anita's question will help you. Let me give you a little more than just Anita's question. You need to go beyond C5. I know it sounds like, well, obviously, Brendan, right? But when you say you're doing falsetto, do you mean purely real, complete, disconnected falsetto? If you do, then C5 in pure falsetto, yeah, that's really good. That's really good because you need to start flipping to this thing we've been talking about, this flageolet. To do that in a pure falsetto, it's really hard. So you're actually doing really well. You need to flip. Just like you would never try to bring your chest voice up to something that high, it's time to flip into the next register. So, David, those exercises that we've been talking about all day, it's a flageolet day. You need to get to flageolet. Yeah. The answer to getting higher is to go way above it. I know that seems completely strange. You would think it would need to be incremental. shoot above it into that flageolet. I would start on that, well, you said C5. Yeah, C5, I'm sorry. So C5, yeah, that's definitely good in falsetto. I'm thinking of G5 right above it. That's where you should start that flageolet. Yeah. And go up from there. Yeah, definitely need to start accessing that flageolet, and then I bet you get a few extra notes on your falsetto as a result. Sammy, hello Sammy. I was hoping to see you. I know that when you work out, it's important to take rest recovery days. Is this an important practice with the voice? Yes and no. Yes and no. The short answer is yes. I don't think you need to sing 7 days a week. I do think you need to vocalize 7 days a week, which you do anyway because you talk. But for both the mind and the body, have a day of rest. Take a Sabbath day, have a day of rest. But it's not as important as it is with working out. Where working out, you should really do a day on, a day off, day on, a day off, or maybe 2 days off, right? Because the vocal muscles, while there is some recovery time, they're not being as taxed as the lifting muscles are. There's some in there. There is, don't get me wrong. But the vocal muscles are getting less work done to them and are much more resilient than those other muscles because specifically, not even muscles, but the epithelium, which is the outside layer of the vocal folds, they have this healing property. They're being smacked together, abrased even, thousands, millions of times per day, and they naturally heal themselves, right? It's a really incredible quality they have, whereas the other muscles don't have the same kind of healing property. They do heal, but not in the same way, right? And so really with your vocal work, you're not really taxing the muscles to the same degree. Maybe in the beginning there's going to be a little bit of that, but usually not. What you're really taxing is the epithelium layer, and that heals pretty quickly. So, yes and no. Do not overexert yourself. Can we all just say right now, I promise not to overexert myself vocally? Good. That's what we're looking for, okay? So never overexert yourself, and take a day of rest just for the mind and for the voice, okay? It's amazing how much the voice improves in the times we're not singing. Our brain processes all that information. Take breaks. Take breaks for sure. Your first time in the chat. Well, welcome. Welcome to the family. It's a couple people's first time in the chat, I believe, today. And SLP, one of us from Argentina, and I'm wondering, how do you balance compression with vocal stress that can lead to vocal injury? Thanks. All right, well, welcome to the chat. Always good to have a fellow speech-language pathologist among us. Let's talk about compression. Compression, I think, is often misunderstood. Compression, when I watch a lot of other videos on YouTube, is usually a bad word. Compression is, oh, straining. And that's not what compression is. That is excess compression. That is too much compression. Compression, in and of itself, is not a good or bad thing, right? It's not a good or bad thing. It's just a direction the chords can go. The chords can come together medially, right? And the tighter they come together, the more compression they have, the less breathy the voice is, and the more connected the voice is. This is very decompressed. Now I'm bringing the chords a little bit more together, and I'm getting more compressed, and now I'm bringing them even tighter together, and now I'm making them the tightest, and this is really tight. That could be a problem. But just a little more compression on itself is not a bad thing. And so more often than not, the vocal stress doesn't come from that. It comes from extrinsic laryngeal muscles. It comes from too much subglottal pressure. It comes from too much volume and airflow. It comes from not combining or timing the voice with the breath. Compression is only a piece. It's only a piece. And I often encourage my speakers and singers to learn how to manipulate that compression just like I did. Yes, there's a little bit of tension that happens with compression, but not all compression is bad. Not all tension is bad. I know that's going to surprise a lot of people. We hear tension. No, 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 no tension. Muscles only work with tension. When I move my arm, there's either tension this way or tension that way, right? So there's going to be some tension, but it's, am I using a good balance of the tension? And what kind of tension? Okay, so compression is not a bad word. Let's enjoy compression and use it when appropriately. Balance compression with the airflow, with the laryngeal muscles, and you'll have a nice, healthy voice. Hope that answers it. Anita says, that's great, Jan. Yes, it is, Jan. Doing wonderful. Don, suggestions for courses to help me learn the relationship between treble and bass clefs as it relates to tenors having to go back and forth in a piece of music. Non-musically trained amateur tenor. That's a very specific question, Don. I can't think of a specific course offhand for that specific skill. I would encourage you, again, to understand your music theory. I would encourage you to experiment with pieces that might go back and forth between that, but I can't think of a specific course that would teach the distinction between going back between treble and bass clefs. I just think understanding treble and bass clef, music theory-wise, would be very helpful for you. What you can do is even learn a little piano, as they're going to have both the treble and bass clefs, and see if you can sight read those pieces. Actually sing the piano part. That would be helpful. But a specific course, I can't. I apologize. Anita, thank you, Brendan, for explaining clearly and also for the advice in our last session on how to produce chest voice vibrato. Yes, I'm able to produce chest voice vibrato, but for a very short time. Anita, that's excellent. That's progress from last time. Yes, I recall we were asking about the vibrato. I'm glad that helped. Awesome. That's why we do this. That's why we do this. And hey, if you can do it, but only for a very short period of time, that's still more than before, which was none, right? So take that victory. That is a victory. Nice. Brendan, is it okay to sing in a head mixed voice in B flat 5? For a man, I've heard singers do this, and I wonder if it's possible to do it consistently or if it's probably too much stretch on the CT. Yeah, it's okay. I'm a little more lenient with what's okay and what's not okay. I'm a big believer, as you might guess from the voice breakdown videos, of being able to do as many sounds as you possibly can. I would just say be wise. Know your voice. Is it causing a strain? Is it causing any pain? Is it causing you to lose your voice? If the answer is no and it feels fine, if it feels fine and it sounds fine, then it is fine. Yeah, absolutely. Keeping in mind, never do just one vocal thing. Vocal variety is the answer to keeping your voice as healthy as possible. Okay, so it won't cause too much strain on the CT if you're also activating the thyroarytenoid later on. It's David's first time too. So great. Good to see so many newcomers this time. Hopefully you're joining Justin's chats as well, but it's good to have some of you here. Don, where should I start learning music theory? Take piano lessons. There are numerous courses out there. I'll admit that I'm a little bit out of the loop on this, mainly because for piano and for music theory, I'm largely self-taught. For me, I picked up some piano books and I cracked the code, and that's how I learned to do what I learned to do. I did take tuba. That's right, I'm a tuba player when I was growing up, and so most of my music theory was learned from the tuba. And then I would just ask the treble clef players, hey, how does that work? And they'd say, oh, the first note's an E. and then I kind of learned it from there. So I unfortunately don't have too much to offer you by means of specific courses, but I'm sure of simple Google search of music theory courses. There is a website, musictheory.net, that I remember I had a few assignments in when I did music theory that I learned it in. But again, I'm largely self-taught when it comes to all of that. If you have specific music theory questions, I can try to answer. But as far as a specific course, you might just want to Google music theory courses. I wish I could help more, Don. I'm really sorry about that. I do think that we might come out with a music theory course one of these days. It seems like there's a little bit of a want for it, so I'll let you know if that happens. Okay. Don says, I believe the note one line below treble clef is middle C. Yeah, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. So they call those ledger lines. So you have the staff, the 5 lines, right? That's our 5th line there. And if you see any little lines above it, or below it, we call those ledger lines. It's just so we can have extra lines. And the one right below the staff on the treble clef is middle C. And the one right above it on bass clef is middle C. That's where they meet. So you can imagine putting your treble clef above your bass clef with that little ledger line in between. That'll be my nose here, okay? And that's the middle C. So you can imagine the notes descending, hitting middle C, and then descending further past that, or ascending. Yeah. A simple way is to know the mnemonic devices that help you remember it. So I remember, this is going back to when I was, I don't know, 4 or 5. For the treble clef, there was a little song. E, G, B, D, F. These are the lines of the treble clef. F, A, C, E. These are the spaces in between. And that's how I learned treble clef. And then bass clef, the lines are good boys deserve fine awards. And the spaces are all cows eat grass. Or just know the bottom line of bass clef is G, and say your letters up from there. Know the bottom line of the treble clef is E, and say your letters up from there. Yeah, and then just look at music a lot so you can get that to be automatic. Okay. Sammy, have you ever heard the singer Phil Wickham? Of course I've heard Phil Wickham. Phil Wickham. I can't tell you how many times we've performed Phil Wickham in church over the years. I've always been amazed by his dexterity in his upper ranges and wondered about his technique. Yeah, he's a great singer. Fun fact, his brother Evan Wickham, he has a brother, Evan Wickham, who sounds almost, I don't want to belittle them, but almost identical. They have such similar voices. It's really, really incredible. So check out Evan Wickham as well. Everyone's been sleeping on him, and he's really good too. But yeah, great head voice, great mix. Really, really great. Definitely a higher larynx position would be my only, I wouldn't even say a critique, but just one of those things that I wonder how much of that is habit versus how much of that is technique. But yeah, really great. Really great Christian artist. Has been around for a long time now, and just fantastic. Yeah. But don't forget about Evan Wickham. Yeah. Evan Wickham has a song. So one of my favorite Christian artists is a group called Young Oceans, and they have an album where a bunch of people covered their songs, and Evan Wickham has a song on there. I think he does, I'm looking it up right now. He does a song called, let's see, I think it's Only You. Yes, Only You on the album Voices by Young Oceans. So you can check out Evan Wickham on there. Very similar to Phil. Great dexterity, great range. It's really fantastic. Don, gotta walk before I trot. Yeah, you do. But listen, consistency is key. Don't overwhelm yourself. Today, just look at the notes and go, okay, I named the lines of the treble clef. Tomorrow, do it again and try to do it on the bass clef. The next day, add a little more. Consistency is key. You'll look back a year later and go, whoa, I can read music, right? And the year flies by. It truly does. Lorraine's first time as well. So many first timers. What a great day. Thank you for doing this. You're welcome. My voice sounds best in the alto range. Is there anything you can suggest for increasing voice quality in richness or richness in upper ranges? Yes, I can. I want you to think about the voice in terms of two parameters, okay? The sound source and the sound space. The sound source and the sound space. Every sound in existence has a source where the sound comes from, and the space, the place in which it vibrates. Right now I'm talking in this room, and if I was in a vocal booth, it would sound a lot different, right? And so in your body, you have the sound source, the vocal cords themselves. But you don't have a hole right here. That sound travels throughout your throat, your mouth, your nose, and then we hear it. Source, space. So far, so good. Source, space. You need to determine which one of those is going awry, which one of those is not working well in order to determine what you want to fix. Typically, when people are talking about quality and richness, they're usually talking about the space. When you're talking about breathiness or distortion, that's usually the source. So if you're trying to improve your richness up high, it's likely that the space has changed once you went up high. Hopefully this is making sense. Down below, ma 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 ma, but up high, ma, it loses its quality. So you need to make sure that your spaces get matched to your down low stuff. Long story short, it's likely your larynx. It's likely your nasal resonance. We need to learn how to manipulate this, right? So up high, are you raising that up? Mo. Opening up that space. Also, nasal resonance. What's your soft palate and back of tongue doing? Is it or what's the distinction there? So you need to learn a little bit about resonance and how you can manipulate these body parts. Check out Voice Breakdown. I have 4 videos called the Component Focus videos. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1's about the vocal cords, 2 is about the larynx, 3 is about the tongue, 4 is about the soft palate. It'll teach you how to manipulate those body parts. Then do some exercises trying to move those things, okay? That should be at least a decent start, Lorraine. And glad to have you with us. Anita, Don, there are a lot of videos on music theory. Yeah, YouTube's the place to go. We live in a day and age where don't tell the colleges and universities this, but you can really learn a lot of stuff off the internet. So yeah, YouTube's the way to go. Vincent, you don't have to learn piano or any instrument to learn music theory. There are lots of videos, books, and apps. Yeah, Vincent is absolutely right. Ooh, there you go. Complete Idiot's Guide to Music Theory. But then, thank you for the answer. You're welcome. I wanted to ask if head dominant mix is when you add compression to the CT dominant register, or if it is a light chest voice. I feel quite a difference between them. Head dominant mix. Yes. Yes. So if it's head dominant, it is a head voice primarily with a little bit of that compression and chest in there. Versus a chest dominant mix is truly a chest voice that we're adding some of those head qualities to. So yeah, the head dominant mix is cricothyroid dominant, bringing in those vocal cords for a little bit of that connection and compression there. Yeah. And you should feel the difference between them because they're different. You're welcome, Don. Jan, let's see. Blend tones, when you think of something. What is the difference of sound between a head voice with compression and a head voice with some TA activation, basically a mixed voice? This might be the best question ever asked because it's really technical. It's really technical. If there was true TA activation, we'd be back into that chest voice land. Does that make sense? So in one sense, you can't really do. It's a spectrum. It's a spectrum here, right? If there was true TA activation, we'd be back towards the chest line. But the compression is that feeling of that medial, for lack of a better term, compression, that medial pushing, that medial squeezing, and you'll hear that that actual pushing together of the chords there. Thanks for the song recommend. Yes, Sammy, and not just the song, that artist. They are my favorite Christian artist. Listen to all of Young Oceans for sure. Yeah, watch them soon. Brendan, you should definitely do some singers breakdown series in NYVC's channel. It would be so nice to know what are the mechanics of my favorite singers. Well, it sounds like I have to do it now. If there's 2 requests for it, sounds like it's on the horizon. But what singers would I do? We've had a bunch of requests for Axl Rose, so that seems like one I have to do. Thank you, Sammy. I will check out Heaven's Song. Do I know Heaven's Song? It's not ringing any bells. I'll have to check it out. The people have spoken, Vincent says. People have spoken. All right. At some point, you've convinced me. So in fact, there is no such thing as a mixed voice combination of CT with T activation on a D5 note. It is just CT with some compression. Hold on, Jan. Let me not say yes to that first. Let me think of that question. First off, we have to remember the variables that not everybody has the same register shifts. Okay, so we can't just say D5 objectively doesn't have that. But to be clear, I'm not saying that there's no way you can do that. I'm not saying there's no TA activation. I'm just saying the more you get to the TA activation, the more you get the natural compression from the chest voice. As you engage that thyroarytenoid, the chords will get a little more like this. And since there's a little more of that height, the compression's easier to achieve versus as you stretch them out, they tend to thin out like that. And as you get higher, if you want to compress, you need to bring in more of that head compression. So I suppose there is that perfect middle zone where you probably can't even tell the difference that much. But as soon as you flip into head dominant, that's where you need to actually compress to get it to happen. Versus when you're down to the thyroarytenoid dominant, it's going to compress a little more naturally, right? So I guess to answer your question, there is probably this perfect middle zone where you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Does that make sense? But that is super technical. I really appreciate that question, and I would have you ask it to Justin. I would have you ask that one to Justin. That's my answer. See what he says. See what he says. That's my answer. Okay? What a question. What a question. Let me D5. I'd have a hard time not doing that completely cricothyroid dominant. Yeah. I can't imagine using any TA on that. Something to think about. I can get back to you on that one. I would ask that question. Say, you could say head voice with compression versus head voice with TA activation. And then you could specifically ask it, is there a point where there's no TA activation and it's just the compression? Screenshot the comment section here and just re-ask it. Yeah. What we're asking is, what causes the connection? Is it the TA dominancy or is it the compression? And is there a point where there's no more TA? I think the answer is yes. There has to be a point where there's no more TA. But remember, the phrase is CT or TA dominant. It's a spectrum. It's a spectrum. And so at some point, if you want to keep that level of connection, you're going to need to compress medially to make up for what you're lacking in the thyroarytenoid activation. I just don't think it's as easy as saying D5 is the spot. Depends on the person. Does that help? 5 minutes left, everyone. Get your last questions in. I hope that's making sense, Jan. It's making sense in my head. I hope I'm conveying it well to you. Long story short, you could have TA activation, you could have CT activation. TA activation has a natural amount of compression due to the bulkiness of the cords. CT has a natural amount of decompression due to the thinning out of the cords. And in order to make up for that, you're going to have to compress up when it's CT dominant. But I suppose there's a middle ground where it would balance out. That's my answer. I'm glad. I'm glad. Every one of these chats gets better and better, everyone. Vincent says, how is my Sunday going? Great. It's a very, very rainy day here in New York. Very rainy day, and I'm loving it. I love a good rainy day. Always gets the creative juices flowing. It's good. And the rainy days help you appreciate the sunny ones. So it's very good. It feels very October here in New York. Yeah. How's yours going, everyone? Stay hydrated. Lorraine, will you be doing this once a month as well as Justin? So there will be 2 available to us? Yep, that's how it's been. Justin does it and I do it. We each do it once a month, so it's 2 a month for you. It's 2 a month. Justin's tend to be a little more singing based since he doesn't really do the voice impressions. We have a bit more of a mix here, and we get some of those voice impression questions as well. Jan says, Vincent says, are you dressing up as anything for Halloween? Nothing planned yet. We'll see. We still have a few more days. Jan says, I've still been looking for those Nick Patera female voice videos, yeah, but haven't found any research on it. I could do a head voice with good compression, but it still seems like something is missing. Yeah, Nick Patera is a beast. Those female voices he does. I think the missing piece, though, Jan, you know when you know what you don't know, right? I know the missing piece is a resonance piece. That's the missing piece. It's a resonance piece. It's just fine-tuning that has been hard. I've gotten close, but then I can only do it in a specific range, right? It's good. It's really good. You're welcome, Larry. Sorry for bringing this question about the registers. Don't be sorry at all. That's why these chats exist. Bring all the questions. All the questions. Sally says, beautiful spring day in New Zealand and a holiday. I didn't know you're coming from New Zealand, Sally. Wow. What holiday is it in New Zealand? Sorry about the rugby match. Your Sunday's going good, David. Good. I wonder what holiday it is in New Zealand. Oh, really? It's Labor Day there. Okay. It's a very New Zealand way to spell labor. We don't have the U here in the United States. That's great. Well, happy Labor Day to you. I hope you're not laboring too much. Hope you're not laboring too much, Sally. 45 seconds, everyone. Get your last question in. What was your most difficult thing to learn in singing? Easy for me, but the hardest thing is, it still is. I do not like the transition from chest voice to head voice. The E4, F4 area, I don't like it. I'd never have. That is easily the hardest spot for me. Yeah. I think I told everyone in the past that I went through a journey with my voice where I actually injured myself. And this is actually one of the things that inspired me to be a speech pathologist and a voice rehabilitation specialist. So that was definitely a difficult time in my singing journey. But I'm all the more grateful for it. The difficulties that we face in life should be seen as blessings as they help us to overcome and become better versions of ourselves. Well, everyone, I love these, and I'm looking forward to the next one. You're welcome for my time, Belen. Good to see you. Everyone who is here for the first time, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the family. Welcome to the club. We love having you. Please come back. You'll see me next month. Thank you, everyone. Always a blast, always a blast. Yeah. I love these. I love these. I almost don't want to go. But I'll see you all next time. Have a wonderful Sunday. And as always, make a joyful noise. Bye.